Mango Thunderslice, and today's video is war. Pardon Julian Assange, President Trump, and talking a little bit about just war, the situation with Julian Assange and his court trial in the UK, and, you know, also the developments in the Caucasus with the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, you know, tangentially connected in a huge way to Turkey and Russia in another sense. But basically, yeah, Julian Assange is essentially, I believe, January 4th is when the court case is expected to conclude and a ruling will be issued. Of course, you know, the judge is, you know, basically an emanation of the intelligence agencies, right? Nothing is known about her, which pretty much means that, you know, this isn't exactly a normal situation. And of course, even in the best scenario in the UK, it's basically kangaroo court and a banana republic. The UK is best. I mean, you know, I used to think that America was a tyranny, and, you know, then basically I saw what happened over the last few years in the United Kingdom, right? It is just amazing that, you know, and it's not just the UK, across Europe, you know, we like to, you know, poo-poo the Constitution sometimes in this country. Oh, it's just a damn piece of paper, and, you know, it doesn't actually constrain people, and that's true, but at least there's the illusion, at least there's the pretense to the freedom of speech, right? We have the First Amendment and the Second Amendment in the Constitution, and they can't get around that except by trying to make, you know, just weasel laws of just wiggling and bending around them. But in the UK and in many other countries, pretty much most of the countries in the world, they don't even have the pretense to freedom of speech. So you can literally be fined, you know, for posting an offensive Facebook post or something like that. It's just amazing, right? Of course, Count Dankula was, you know, one who basically made the video of his pug. He trained the pug to basically, you know, lift its right paw in the air as a sort of Roman salute whenever he said, you know, gas the Jews. But, you know, and obviously a joke, you know, Count Dankula is hardly a fascist of any sort, right? He's an anti-fascist in the real sense, not in the sense of Antifa, which is actually just fascism by another name. And, you know, it's just really amazing. The idea of being sent to jail in this country because somebody got offended by a Facebook post, right? Somebody doesn't even have to get offended. It's just that you posted something that is offensive by the arbitrary rules set by the state, right? And, you know, the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is a total joke, right? London, even back in the day, London was like an overpriced city full of old people and not as, you know, not very fun to visit, except if you just like staring at statues all day, which of course many people do. I'm okay with statues for at least a few hours, but it can only take so many days straight of just staring at statues and artwork. But in any case, it's just really a damn shame to see what has happened to Julian Assange. For a man who has literally offered so much value to the world and to the people who are seeking freedom from actual oppression, right? Not the fake social justice narrative of oppression that we have right now, but we are all under the thumb in a big way of the monetary system and, you know, basically these set of industries that don't actually have the well-being of the people of this planet in mind, but basically profit off of and accentuate and lead to more of the actual suffering that, you know, their industries are based off of responding to, right? You know, the private prison industry, right? The institutionalized armaments industry, right? The military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industry, the media, the big tech, right? All of these are very much ensconced within a structure of power that relies on war making as its fundamental aspect of, you know, in a big sense, the only reason for the centralized state to exist throughout history was so that war making could be effectively accomplished, right? If there is no reason, if there is no outside enemy that we have to mobilize against, then there's no real reason to centralize things beyond a certain point. Of course, there's always an impetus for organization, there's always an impetus for governance, but not an impetus and a need for large centralized, you know, governance with a bloated bureaucracy, right? That's just where things sort of evolved into, but it is totally incongruous with the intent of the founding and, that self-same Constitution. There's only a few roles that the federal government is actually supposed to be playing. And, of course, those can cost a lot of money, but the idea of spending, several $1 trillion every year on all these things and basically having 500 military bases all around the world and being, basically this, dictator, whether benevolent or malevolent, depending on who's in charge and, what the actual action is. But, Trump, for all his foibles and lack of eloquence in many ways, he has not started a new war, and I will continue to give him massive amounts of credit for that. And he's attempted to pull us out of Iraq and Afghanistan and to numerous other theaters, and it's very praiseworthy. It's something very much to be applauded. Of course, not by the mainstream media. Of course, the one day, actually, I guess it was 2 days, but essentially the one time when Trump actually got a positive shake by the media was when he launched the missiles at Syria. Right, it was those 2 occasions when he basically fired missiles at some, empty parking lots as a symbolic act that basically they were falling over themselves to praise him and to say, this is Trump presidential for the first time. Look at him firing these missiles. Look at the glory of our weapon and our missiles flying out of the ship. It was just just hilarious how quick they turned. And then when they realized that there was no real big military incursion following it up, that it was exactly that, just a symbolic strike to sort of appease the narrative, basically they flipped right back and said, oh, this is Trump, on the side of dictators, what's his name? I can't even remember his name right now. The president of Syria. In any case, it's funny, they try and make him out to be this dictator, this ruthless dictator. The guy's like a former orthodontist. He is basically so antithetical to the image that they're promoting. It's funny. I mean, at least in North Korea, you actually have a fairly brutal regime. On that note, people, with all the other things happening this year, people haven't really noticed that it may actually be that Kim Jong-un is actually dead, and they are basically just pretending that he is out. He, of course, he was disappeared for several weeks, and then they showed a video of him coming out, and they're like, okay, yeah, it was just a conspiracy theory, he's alive. But I guess it was revealed that video was taken, beforehand. And so there really hasn't been, as far as I'm aware, any viewing of Kim Jong-un since that time. And so who knows? He may have actually had a botched surgery and may actually be dead. But because of all the other things going on, nobody's actually noticed. And that would be very consequential. It's not like it would make the North Korea situation go away, right? And apparently his sister, Kim Jong-un's sister, would take power, and she's, apparently reportedly even more ruthless than her brother, but we'll see. I mean, again, that's that powerful feminist woman, right? Do you think they'll actually cheer for the powerful feminism when it's basically a female, brutal, genocidal dictator of North Korea? Remains to be seen. As long as the person is against Trump, I think it's fair to say that they'll be praised. And then when Trump actually meets with her, what will they say then? Do they want him to appease the dictator so that they can, promote strong female empowerment? Who knows? No, it's far from, too absurd given the current context. Everything is beyond absurd. And again, what they hate Trump so much for, all these candy-ass people in the middle, oh, he's not presidential. He doesn't sound like a president sounds in my TV shows. And, it's, again, people are morons, right? Their illusions have been broken. And that's what they hate Trump for, because they liked their illusions. They were comfortable. I mean, especially for the military-industrial complex, the illusion that we need to be the world policemen and basically all over the world enforcing, the interests of the monetary system and the major corporations and the international banks, right? It's very much an illusion. We don't need to be doing that role. It's totally possible to have a coherent and strong defense, our national defense, without going and being, right in people's backyards all over the world. I mean, it's like, yeah, look how threatening Iran is. Look how close they put their country to all of our military bases, right? We've got Iran totally surrounded. And it's like, I would never support any sort of war on Iran. At the same time, there are diplomatic and economic measures that can be used, right? You can put pressure on countries without actually, and on people without actually, blowing them up, and without actually going all the way to that point. And I think that Trump has used an effective form of foreign policy by sort of, waving that economic stick around and not so much the military stick. He just references the fact that the military has been built up. It's again, speak softly but carry a big stick, right? You can't. The people who are always screaming and raging are the people who have a small stick, if you will, right? And, it's again, we can have a strong society that doesn't go to war, but we cannot have a weak society that achieves peace, because violence is born of weakness. Violence is born of necessity, and necessity is born of weakness. And, the strong will be able to solve situations before it comes to that point. They'll be able to fix the underlying issues and correct the imbalance, right? And that's what we're seeing in this new paradigm, in this new world, is that even though the old structure is still there technically, and there's still definitely major actors within it who are trying to push that narrative of global empire and of globalism in general, but it's very much weakening, and the frequency and vibration of the people coming up in this new paradigm in Sixth World, it's to the point where, again, we're running circles around them. They may have been the most powerful people in the world for a, series of, decades and even centuries, depending on which, groups you're actually looking at. But right now, they are being eclipsed. And the pace of our ingenuity, the pace of our development is faster than they can even contain, which is why we see the fission that we see right now, the fissures in the system, and that cracking of the illusions is all, it was inevitable. And Donald Trump is just one of the most perfect avatars we could have hoped for to manifest and embody that shift of paradigms. And, as always, as I've noted, the grand conspiracy is energy. Of course, what we're usually fighting for is, oil and gas rights, or at least in Turkey's case, they're, again, fighting over natural gas rights. In the Eastern Mediterranean, literally just claiming, like, Egyptian and Libyan and Greek waters and mineral rights, basically just by force of arms, and just sending their ships out there. So they're expanding in one direction that way. They're literally invading, Syria, and they've been, killing the Kurds for a long time. And then on the northern front, they're literally, right behind, they're militarily supporting Azerbaijan in a military incursion against Armenia. And it's, a disputed territory, I guess, called Nagorno-Karabakh, right? It's known as the Republic of Artsakh. It was originally, I guess, Azeri land of Azerbaijan, and then basically it was taken by Armenia back in like 1992 or something. I guess there were some UN resolutions saying that they were supposed to give it back, but at the same time, the Republic of Artsakh, which I guess isn't formally recognized as an independent state, but it's kind of treated as part of Armenia, is mostly Armenian by genetics and population makeup. So, it's essentially, it's like when Russia recaptured Crimea. Like, Crimea, for all intents and purposes, culturally, politically, economically, was already a part of Russia. And so it's like them rejoining Russia, they try and paint it as this big, just unbelievable military incursion on par with the Third Reich and Hitler and whatnot. I mean, realistically, if there's any analog to the actions of Germany led by Hitler in the Third Reich to the modern world, it is literally Turkey and Erdogan, right? I know that's not how his name is pronounced in Turkish, but I don't really give a shit because the guy's a total douche. And he's literally like the most obnoxious, horrible person on the world stage today. I read, for years now, I read articles and I'm just like, is this real? Like, is this guy really trying to pull this shit? He's trying to basically make it into the new Ottoman Empire, the new caliphate, right? They were very much against ISIS, right? President Trump in the West very much against ISIS, except for, the Pentagon supporting them and funding them, and the CIA. right? But in this case, Turkey, a NATO member, a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is essentially trying to become the neo-Ottoman empire, the new Islamic caliphate for the world. The Hagia Sophia, which is one of the most famous Orthodox churches in the world, Christian churches, if not the most famous, they've now converted it to a mosque, right? They've been the ones who... Oh, sorry, phone call from Space Panther again. So where was I? Yes, Turkey is the one who was literally financing the moderate rebels, aka Al-Qaeda, within Syria, the ones who, basically split that country into a civil war, which, killed, tens and tens of thousands and displaced millions, right? Sending the immigrant refugee horde into Europe, right? It's because of Turkey. It is absolutely because of Turkey. And, there's a great deal of blame that should be laid at the CIA and the Western intelligence agencies and of Israel, but Turkey's right there with them, and they are honestly at a point where they're going out on their own and not even waiting for orders. They're just, assuming that they can't be stopped, right? They're part of NATO, so they're kind of tied to the U.S. and the West, but not really, right? They're, made pacts with Russia, but not really, right? This is the same country that shot down a Russian, jet fighter back in, 2015, and, expected the West to come in and, start, fight for Turkey, but, it wasn't going to happen. Right, the same country that's, cozying up to China, but not really, right? They're friends with everyone and yet friends with no one. And they think that they're so powerful because they have basically, essentially the United States stores nuclear weapons there, for potential use, in the theater war in the Middle East if ever needed. But ultimately they don't really have a whole lot of power. Their economy is, basically completely shit, especially right now. And they don't really have anything to turn it around. I think eventually there's now worldwide boycotts of Turkish goods, right? We're always hearing about, how bad and awful that the Holocaust was in Germany, which it was. Of course, there was more than just Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. There were more non-Jews than Jews killed in the Holocaust, even by the official numbers. But we never actually hear anything about the Armenian genocide, right? Committed by Turkey, right? There's lots of other genocides that happen, but for some reason it's only the Nazis that actually gets any attention, right? But I think if we were honest, we would recognize that that sort of mania and psychopathy at the highest levels of government should never be encouraged. And, contrary to what people think, that Trump is actually acting that out, I think that he is not. And basically the evidence shows, and this is why he was just nominated for a third Peace Prize, is that his doctrine is pulling us out of these engagements, and sort of in line with the original American ethos of, trade with all, alliances with none. And we'll see. I think in his second term, I think it's possible that NATO finally breaks and effectively, ceases to be a sort of military organization in general, which includes the United States. So yeah, Julian Assange, blessings to him. I feel for his pain. I hope that basically, when this show trial concludes and he is ostensibly extradited to the United States, I hope that basically Trump will keep a close eye on it. He referenced WikiLeaks when he was, basically campaigning in 2016. Of course, it is a big reason why he won. It has nothing to do with Russian hackers, but it does have a lot to do with the military-industrial complex and the Democrats, right? And their feel-good imperialism, right? They've sort of jettisoned the old imperialism, right? Which is just, we're going to bomb you if you, because of freedom and democracy, if you go against American corporate interests, and monetary, system interests. But ultimately, it's now, their whole thing is, we need to invade the world for humanitarian purposes, right? And it's just not going to work. It's failed every time they've tried it. And the rising vibration of the people of this planet is making it impossible for them to really get away with any of them. And so this is why they've engaged the color revolution within the United States, right? Again, it's the same people in Ukraine and Syria as it is in this country. It was literally Soros who was involved in the Ukrainian overthrow and the Syrian overthrow and all these other countries. And now he's the one, behind the one here. And of course, he is not the fountainhead. He is not the head of the pyramid. He's just a functionary within that system that is desperately flailing for control as it gasps for air and sinks deeper down into the depths in the irrelevant waste bin of history. But, it's thanks to people like Julian Assange who have brought that information to the public and enabled that rising vibration to take place. And they are trying to make an example out of him and psychologically torture him and destroy him. But I think that, when it comes down to it, if Trump would recognize that Julian Assange is somebody that is supported by the vast majority of Trump's own supporters, and it totally aligns with his philosophy and doctrine of not engaging in all these unnecessary wars of choice, but we will see. I hope that Trump will pardon Assange if it gets to that point. I kind of expect it to get to that point because I don't see this trial in the UK going anywhere except leading to the extradition. My concern and fear is that Assange would try and kill himself in that situation. He has reportedly been having suicidal thoughts, and one can only scarcely blame him after so many years cooped up inside basically a prison cell inside of the embassy. I mean, it's an embassy, he's an asylum, but it's not that much better than a prison cell. In fact, some people in jail probably have a much better time than Assange is having in political asylum. But, ultimately we will not be swayed, we will not be deterred, we will not fear censorship and the crackdown of would-be tyrants and little pissant, technocrats who think that they can just bend our minds to their will through controlling information and behavioral modification. They can get fucked, and they will. And that's my video today. Hope you all have a good one. I'll see you next time. Peace.
Ah.